Morning, Caitlin.
Good morning.
Morning, Daniel. Morning, Lyle.
Morning.
Hi, Caitlin and Daniel.
Hey, Lyle. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Tom.
Hello, everyone.
So what's that scene of, Daniel? Is that real?
Oh, that's real. That's Torres del Paine in the south. It's the Chilean Patagonia.
Oh, right. Yeah, I've got a colleague who's from Chile, and one of my PhD students is doing a project around app development for mountaineering safety. And so as part of that, they've actually been down to Patagonia and taking some footage. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Stunning.
I've never been to New Zealand, but my feeling is it feels pretty similar.
Yeah, we got it, the Southern Alps, which are similar. They're just not as large, not as expansive as what you've got in Chile. Of course, Chile just extends for forever, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Long, extended.
Long and skinny.
Yeah. Has everyone had their coffee this morning?
No,
Yes.
Not yet.
Your tea's
Here
not
it
in the
is.
microwave again, Lyle?
no. We found a few cups there mouldering away over the weekend, but no, I got through this morning's tea. So I'm onto the coffee now.
I've just finished my coffee and now I'm onto my tea. Better rescue it before it overbrews. So how is everyone? I guess you're all moving into 6 weeks of stage 4.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
We had that for, I can't remember how many weeks it was, at least 6. It was pretty horrible, really, because the worst thing was just going out for a walk and walking down the road, and everyone's avoiding everyone else, you know. So it's like, just human interaction was weird for weeks. It was just horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. For us, the biggest change is we used to go. I have 3 children, so we used to go out as a family at least to get some exercise. Now we have to go in pairs.
Right.
We can't go all together.
Yeah, that would be really
So I can't
tough.
just send the 3 of them to play.
No, that's right.
Take shifts. Yeah. No, pretty hard. Oh, hopefully it works and it's actually worthwhile, and Victoria gets on top of it.
Fingers crossed.
So how's assignment 2 going for everyone? Due next week?
Well, it's feeling very real because I try to, modify my course that it's starting today. So I think I've done most of the implementation. Now I need to describe it.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's actually, it can be a useful exercise where you actually use something you're actually doing for this semester. So it's not about, in a lot of ways, it's not actually extra work as such, but perhaps it's giving you a framework to really explore what you're doing a bit more critically.
Yeah, I'm the same as you, Daniel. I'm trying to implement as I go. For me, it's trying to, develop mastery with all these new tools. Like I'm doing feedback fruit webinars and Kaltura webinars. So it's just trying to keep up with being a step ahead before you then, put it on the students.
Yeah. I think that's the thing is even if you're just one step ahead, then, but I guess it's part of the key, I think, is getting comfortable with change, getting comfortable with exploring new technologies and taking away that fear factor, And of course, no one wants to look like a muppet in front of their students. So you want to make sure it works before you try it.
Yeah, let's not figure out how to predefine all breakout rooms for the whole semester on our Zoom sessions. So that's my with all help from other CIS people. So that's my personal weekend accomplishment in teaching.
So have other people explored the breakout rooms in Canvas? I mean, I've only actually had, sorry, Canvas, I mean Zoom. I've only experienced it a couple of times, and they weren't great experiences for me.
Well, we did in our previous GCUT subject, they used them a lot. We had a semester-long project. So, every other session they would allocate us to our groups to actually get some work done.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to use that this semester. I think it did. And the designing a curriculum course started, and I think there's people I've never met in person, but I think I already know. So I think it doesn't replace, of course, face-to-face group meetings, but I think it's a reasonable proxy.
Excuse me. Tea went down the wrong way. Yeah, I guess it's useful when you've got perhaps a larger class sizes and you want to get synchronous interaction and discussion going. And even in
tomorrow we're doing
classes.
Tomorrow we're doing a session with medical students, and it's 360 students. So we're going to do tutorials in the afternoon, and we'll see how that works.
I've got a few more people joining. So is there anything in particular that anyone wants to, get feedback on, discuss? There's no formal agenda for today. I think I did say something about Fred Garnett last week. He's actually doing a presentation on Friday. I got my seminars mixed up. So I'll be recording that and share it in the Flipboard for you to have a look at. So Fred Garnett is a colleague of Stuart Hayes. Worked quite closely with him on developing ideas around pedagogy and self-determined learning.
And just a question about the practice. I don't know if you discussed that last week. I had to leave at the very end. Practical stuff about next week's presentations.
Sure.
Do we have a schedule of who's going when?
I was just intending to do it probably alphabetically at this stage, but we did discuss creating a spreadsheet for people to, choose times, because we'll have to split it over two sessions, morning and afternoon. So I intend to put a spreadsheet up probably end of today or tomorrow for people to stick their name alongside a time slot. So hopefully everyone finds a time they can use.
Thomas, hello everyone.
Hey Paula.
Reporting from Melbourne lockdown. I don't know about other people or if you had that chat already, but I have found myself with 2 under 3-year-olds. Yeah, there you go. At home.
There's one now.
So, and my partner is a healthcare worker, so I am alone with them all day. I was thinking for the presentation, trying to present online, but have as a backup, I could record it in case,
Yeah, I think that would be fine if you wanted to pre-record.
Yeah, I'll prefer to present live. I think that's way more engaging. But if
but I think practically, like you're saying, it's if it's difficult, then perhaps you find a time when it's quieter for you to actually pre-record most of your presentation, and then perhaps just on the day, open it up for questions, perhaps.
All right. Thank you. That's very helpful. Thanks, Tom.
So everyone else okay? Okay. Ching seems to be wandering around the garden. Exploring the limits of lockdown already. So no pressing issues. Everyone's okay. They're feeling on track.
Absolutely not. I am not on track. I've been thinking a lot about it, and I'm going to work on a hypothetical course because I'm not actually teaching anything at the moment. But it's something that I would like to, put together as a real course. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I was a bit late, but I don't know how people are dividing sort of how much you're going to talk about design research base, because we were talking about that last week on how much emphasis we're going to go on, that we're going to revise, that we're going to include some evaluation points, or focusing more on the activities. I don't know. That's what I've been thinking. I haven't been uncertain about that.
Yeah. So I guess I would hope that people would use a design-based research methodology as the overarching design methodology for what you're doing. Obviously, you don't have to, but that would be what I recommend. And then it basically divides your design process into 4 stages. The first being the analysis, exploration. What's the issue? What's the topic? Or what are you trying to achieve? And that obviously comes back from 2 places: one, the graduate profile, and the literature. And out of that, then developing a prototype, whether that be a module or a full course, or part of a course. That's really up to you. And then looking at how you can evaluate that. So I guess basically the way you go about doing that is you try it out with your students. So maybe it might be the plan is to implement this in whatever the course of the module is in one semester, get feedback from students at the end of that semester, and then you redesign that, reevaluate it, go back to the literature if you think you need to, and create a new iteration of that for the following semester. So I guess that's kind of how I would see it, and whether that's theoretical or involves a real course, that's really up to you. And those design evaluation iterations, it could be just 2, it could be 3, it could be, I know Lyle posted a comment on one of the blogs, how he's been redesigning courses for years. And I guess most people who are practitioners and been involved in a course, hopefully you actually reevaluate everything you do continually. I guess personally, I'd get really bored if I just trotted out the same thing every year.
Better competing with the.
That's okay. It's in China. Yeah, as you know.
Lyle.
I don't think I would be bored, Tom.
Doing the same thing.
Well, I was just complaining, this morning about having to teach. Yeah, it is the same material, but the platforms. I'll talk next Monday about it. But the software platforms keep changing, and so that's the biggest challenge. So if we think of that as the sort of the literature or the tools or the ecology of resources. And then the other thing is, the graduate profile, or the student profile, which is, again, I've touched on that in some of the blog posts, but it's wildly different between the on-campus folks and the online folks. So again, I'll spell that out a bit next week, but just those two things alone are enough to present big challenges every time the subject is redelivered.
I guess that all filters down into, you know, the analysis, isn't it? So it's like, well, how divergent is your student cohort, and what's the implications of that? And do you need different approaches for different, you know?
You definitely do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the component that I'll be thinking about revising is the sort of practical computing or laboratory side, and how we might cater to students at each level, or misguided assumptions or something. We're quite good in the National Consortium at postmortems at looking at what's happened, but we're not so good at prospectively, for example, screening a cohort of students and comparing them to the last cohort, or acting wisely on the feedback, which can also be diverse. And when things go wrong, which they did with this subject a couple of years ago, and I'll come to that, you just get mountains and mountains of feedback. And what I noticed was it got very noisy, because some of the feedback I thought was totally agreed, whereas the rest of it was, they just got ripped off and all that sort of thing. So it was like there was a lot of just upset people, and so that was a big challenge. And so I think if we'd had a mechanism to sort of deal with that iteratively.
Yes.
And as Katie was saying, it might be three or 4 years, but I've been doing it for a lot more than 3 or 4 years, and I think there's a lot more 3 or 4 year cycles to go. So
So I think that's some of the key issues that you sort of highlighting there, Lyle, is not making assumptions. So basically asking your students and getting some demographics off them. So some form of survey is key when you're looking at either developing a new course or evaluating what you've done, and trying to filter through, as you say, the noise, and what are the key things, what are the things that are actually important, rather than did you just have a grumpy student who riled everyone up? What were the actual real issues, and how they filter back into the redesign of the course?
And what's reasonable and what isn't, I guess.
Well, exactly. So it's time frame, time load. What is, and it comes down to money as well. What's feasible, and there's lots of issues around that. What's feasible from the resources from the university, but also the resources that students have access to. So once again, that's perhaps surveying your students. If you're wanting them to use smartphones, for example, then ask them, do they have smartphones, and what sort of smartphone? These days it's, they pretty much all have them, but it still pays to actually ask.
Yeah, well, we've been through a few cycles. So once again, with the passing of time, I'm old enough to remember when people didn't have a computer. So there was people saying, well, I don't know, do we have computer labs at the university? And the next cycle was the cost of software. So we've been through that for proprietary software, and we've sort of solved that. We now have sort of some site licenses and some cheap access, and some free stuff. But the next iteration seems to be the technological one. Like how far can we push students to use the latest technology? And that's what we're struggling with, because it requires a lot of overhead, shall we say, in order to run the state of the art software. You need to have other things installed, and you need to be able to think about how things fit together in a particular way. And there's a lot of students who are not up. It would be interesting to hear from some others what the myth or the great misconception, but the one I hear from my colleagues is some of these, the old gag, some of these students in mathematics statistics don't seem to have seen a computer before, or that they've got no idea what a computer program is. That's that sort of stuff. So and the more diverse the backgrounds, the more extreme that problem can be. So may I end this monologue with an expression from Richard Dawkins, the biologist. He said of people not being able to believe evolution. He called the expression the argument of personal incredulity, which is that well, evolution can't be true because I can't believe it would be possible. You know, it's just incredible to me. And so many of the staff I work with express personal incredulity about how the background of the students is getting worse, terrible. They don't seem to know anything, but we've been hearing it for 30 years. So it's sort of, they just can't be getting as much worse as everybody thinks they are. So in other words, I think the problem might be us.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it does. Yeah, tend to be like that. Be interesting too to look at cultural issues. So obviously without being face-to-face campus based, but I assume the counterpoint to that is by everything being online now, then potentially you can access or have access to a much more diverse cultural, elements for your students as well, because they could be from anywhere. If you're not teaching face to face anymore, then those geographical boundaries don't exist, do they? And then how do you how do you design a course that meets such a diverse, differences in culture?
I just want to say, I think before the online mode of delivery, the cultural diversity is already there. Like I don't know how more diverse it can be with an online. It's just different mode to me.
I'm just
it's
kind of
more
thinking,
of that.
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking that with online, potentially it can be more diverse because you can have people from any country in your course, depending on the enrollment criteria, of course. But yeah.
Yes, in my case, so in computing information systems, we were expecting a drop in enrollments this year. I don't know how it has, worked for other subjects, but in my subject, we have an increase in 80% of enrollments because we went everything online. And we have people that are not in Melbourne. And I teach a health informatics course, and now 60% of the students are clinicians. Last year, it was about 20% clinicians and 80% computer science IT people. Now it's, the other way around.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting reflection on your blog post around that, Daniel. And certainly that sort of cohort, it's the access is part of the key and the flexibility, isn't it? So online gives people, practitioners who are busy people and time poor, you can't necessarily, do a face-to-face course. It gives them much better access.
What remains to be seen is how these fully online offerings will attract international students. So yeah, because the Biostatistics Collaboration of Australia, again, talk about that a little next week, has been going for 20 years. It's totally online, but you can't enroll in it unless you're an Australian, because in order to, if you're a non-Aussie citizen or I guess permanent resident, then you need to satisfy an on-campus requirement. And we effectively only have one subject on campus, which is the capstone, the workplace project portfolio. And so it has brought people from all over Australia and from strategic locations overseas, because if you're Australian overseas, then you can enroll, but we don't have genuine overseas enrollments. Whereas with the on-campus one, we do have a lot of overseas students, and now of course they're online. So well, they will be for this semester, and they're taking two subjects. I've taken two last semester, which was blend. So one of the things I've been pondering is whether the requirements for on-campus participation will gradually be wound back over the coming years, so that people can genuinely participate in fully online subjects from anywhere in the world without having to be an Australian citizen. And also, yeah, the international student boom seems to have come to a pretty tragic end. So I think that's going to drive change. But again, it's going to be quite a while. Whereas I think, Daniel, you were talking more about students in Australia. You've only really had face-to-face so far. So suddenly people from who can't come to campus or located regionally can join in. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
There's also a time zone issue that
Yes, yeah,
cannot be synchronous.
yeah. They're particularly around synchronous, isn't it, Andrea? Yeah. So I know at AUT, for example. I mean, that's a really good point, Andrea. Lecturers who effectively refused to change their practice were requiring, Chinese students to be synchronous with lectures effectively at 3 a.m. in the morning, and it's just, that's just absolutely ridiculous. There's no need for that.
So I think if we still provide the social dimension to this to make a learning community, we probably need to change to small lectures as a topic for discussion, and then you open online forum for unsynchronized students to put their ideas, and so that they can socialize across time zones.
Yeah, yes, the time zone things is a big issue if you're looking at international cohorts and how you design for synchronicity or asynchronicity. I guess in some ways you can approach it a bit like tutorial groups, where you perhaps have cohorts in close time zones engaging in synchronous activity, and then sharing those asynchronously with the larger group.
And if we just organize by convenience to organize a student from the same time zone in a group, that will reduce the benefit of diversity that you
That's exactly the problem.
Yeah. The other way is to try to find compatible time zones. So, for quite a number of years, I've been running CMOOCs, and I've tried to time those so that I can get participation from the UK and New Zealand, at a time where it's not too early in the morning for New Zealand and not too late at night, or vice versa, and try to match that up. Unfortunately, with daylight saving, that makes that quite difficult, as the changeover happens about 3 or 4 times during the year. So you've got to figure that into your, when you're selecting times as well. I think Queensland, they don't do daylight saving, do they? Although Melbourne's not Queensland.
The really tough one is, when you've got someone in New York, someone in London, and someone in Melbourne. I was trying to think New York, New Zealand, and somewhere else, but that's really impossible. But I'm involved in 2 conferences this month, and one of them is just saying, well, if you're in Australia or America, forget about it. We're just running on European time. I think it's fair enough. It's a big conference, and they had to make decisions so we can sort of catch the morning session, I think, in the evening. But obviously, you'd have to stay up all night to catch the afternoon and evening sessions in Europe. But the other one, the software conference, is having 3 sessions, and so they have a session that's sort of in the day for each of those 3 locations, and so people preferentially sort of offer their abstract and presentation up in one of those sessions, and then it's all recorded. In fact, they're asking people to record presentations and send them in, and so it'll all be captured on video anyway. But I thought that was a good way of doing it, that you had a sort of, it was a 24-hour, that's what they did. They said it was a 24-hour conference, and so there'll be sort of 3 brackets of sort of 4 to 8 hours or something like that, which would there be a time for everyone. So, next week.
Sessions, same content or different content?
No, different content. Yeah. So no, it's different content. Yeah. So you would be able to participate sort of live, which I guess really means being able to ask questions and have a bit of a discussion. But then you could listen to the rest of it. Yeah. So that's the downside, is that it would sort of be silly to run it 3 times when you can record it.
So
we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. So that really ties back into the design of your course and the context. So if your course is completely aimed at, you know, Australian students in Victoria, they're all in the same time zone, then that's not an issue. But if your course is looking at students from diverse time zones and cultures, then that's a significant design element you need to put into your course design.
Right. It kind of, we can spread the previously parallel sessions into 24 hours, spread across time.
Yeah, that's right. And it's also where asynchronous tools like, you know, discussion forums and Twitter come in, and I'm still waiting for tweet number 3 from Lyle.
Oh yes, yes. Well, maybe something from maybe some thoughts on lockdown. In fact, the tweet of the moment would be, I'm far less scared by 6 weeks of stage 4 lockdown than I am by 12 weeks of semester 2. So, because I'm involved in a lot of stuff, but it means that I have been able to pick one subject to work on for assignment 2 and present some ideas next week. So that's that's funny. It's all happening, as they say, but we will get through.
Yep. So what design frameworks are people focusing on? You know, perhaps, you know, Caitlin, what are you, where are you at with you know, assignment 2? Have you made some decisions around perhaps design frameworks that you're going to use, learning theories that are going to inform your particular context?
Yeah, well, I've been, like in terms of learning, I think I'll go social culture because it's first year psychology text. I think design framework, to be honest with you, is the thing that I've been struggling with the most in terms of choosing what to use, because like, I mean, I'm looking at you know, I've been reflecting on like the presentations that people did I think in week 6, and I also caught up on the pedagogy presentation. He was kind of talking how feedback then first year might be, it's a first year psychology subject that I'm looking at, would be Andrew, like probably not, would like to lean more towards andragogy and hoidagogy. And I don't know, I would love to hear other people's ideas, and I definitely am still kind of working on. Oh, is Tom frozen?
My connection seems to be
no.
pretty bad today, unfortunately. But yeah, I think that idea of scaffolding, particularly when you're looking at design across, you know, the link of an actual course. So if you're looking at, you know, what do you do first year, second year, and third year? Effectively, you need to stage and scaffold what you're doing. You're building on that till you get to the point in third year where you're hopefully moving much more towards self-directed learning. So I guess I sort of see the way to approach, if you're really wanting to look at innovation in curriculum design, you can't just do that in third year, because you're introducing a whole lot of new concepts, perhaps a whole new ecology of resources for your students. You're expecting them to think differently, and they haven't been prepared for that. So you need to start staging it right in the first year, and establish your baseline, where you're wanting to head, why, what sort of tools are going to be core, and then in second year you build on that, build into the, you know, more collaboration, more teamwork, and then in third year, because all those basics are covered by third year, then you can be really, really creative, and that's what you want to do with your third year students as well. Wow, you had a streaker in the background.
Oh, did I? He's been threatening to do that the whole time. One of the sessions last week, he and his sister sort of tortured the cat to the delight of some of the students. So, you know, if you squeeze the cat, it sounds like a bagpipe. It's not very funny.
The virtual background helps with, you know, your family walking behind you.
Yeah, so you have to have a computer that will tolerate it. And I haven't had much success, but yeah, that for the future.
Yes, hints for online learning. Yes. Any other areas that people want to talk about, discuss? Chelsea, where are you at? Might as well, you know, put people on the line.
Yeah. Well, I'm, you know, as Daniel was saying earlier, I'm similar and I'm trying to implement as I go. So I feel that that's been really helpful because I've got, you know, my first 6 weeks at least that I can, that I've developed that I can build into my Spark presentation. But yeah, similar to what Caitlin was saying, I've been thinking about what my main framework is. That I've found okay. I think I'll be working within a constructivism sort of philosophy, but then sort of separating the theory from the frameworks and looking at all the different, because I draw on so many different frameworks, I think, in the activities that I'm doing. So I hope that's okay. But there's, like, you know, flipped classroom in there and problem-based and active learning. So yeah, it's good to get other people's feedback when I do present as to whether that's just a bit too much or not.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. And what I tend to do is not just use one framework or one design theory.
Okay.
I take the bits out of different ones, but by doing that, at least you're linking it back to theoretical constructs. So it's not just a hit and miss.
Yeah. Okay. So that's okay then. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, for example, I like some of the ideas around rhizomatic learning, but what I really sort of pick out of that is the idea of triggering events. That's what really stood out for me from rhizomatic learning, not necessarily the completely deconstructed, decentralized nature of rhizomatic learning, but that concept of what is your job as the teacher. The job of the teacher in rhizomatic learning is to design triggering events, stuff to make people think. You know, stuff to point people in the right direction, get them conceptualizing what you're wanting, what you think are the key elements, and particularly around issues that students struggle with. And that's things that you identify, you know, after you've done a course several times. You start to, you know, really see what are the issues that students really struggle with, and that's where you put your effort into. If you're doing, you know, course redesign over a significant number of years, is how do you get students past those particular hurdles?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yes, because I've been teaching this subject for a while now, so I know what those pitfalls are. Yeah.
Jeanette, how are you going?
I'll mute myself. Yeah, probably similar. Like, I think there's just a lot of stuff floating around in my head at the moment, and I've got a course that's starting today, which I'm hoping to get this applied to. And I think in the setup for it, I've kind of been drawing on lots of the things that we've been talking about in terms of, you know, theory and applications of online learning. But I'm yet to kind of coordinate it into a coherent thing to present. So that's, I guess, where I'm at. Lots of stuff swimming around, lots of theories and lots of practical applications, but just kind of listing it. I think it's going to be helpful to have this deadline for me to kind of get my own head clear as well and be able to present it and talk about it. But no particular questions because my head's in a mess.
No worries. How about you, Helen?
I just unmute. Yeah, I'm looking at it's architectural history and urban design history, and I guess in terms of learning methodologies, I'm looking at design for learning kind of theories. and social constructivism. My questions are really more kind of about how much detail we need in next week's presentation and also in the final subject delivery around, you know, the kind of the detail of the curriculum. So this is a subject that will have, you know, kind of like 24 like learning units online, and then synchronous workshops online. And then I'm just wondering how much of that sort of detail do you want, A, in next week's presentation, and then B, in the final subject. So would it be like, this is a sample of an online lecture module, and this is a sample of, you know, a group activity tutorial kind of module, and this is the learning framework? Or do you want like a comprehensive subject, considering that this is a, you know, a new subject, so it's not something that's only going to be delivered? How much of the actual detailed content needs to be there in the kind of final subject presentation?
Yeah, I don't think it has to be hugely detailed. It's just more about aligning it and thinking what are the critical, you know, the critical points being the learning outcomes, you know, the demographics, what are you trying to achieve, what's the graduate profile, and how are you going to do that? So I guess I kind of conceptualize it as far as looking at it as part of a design-based research methodology. Your pitch next week is kind of like the coming out of the analysis reflection stage and informing your prototype, and then the final assignment is your first prototype. And so in some ways it would kind of be almost thinking, I was just kind of thinking as you're talking to Helen, that maybe assignment 2 is kind of like what you would pitch to your colleagues or the academic board. You know, this is what we think is why we're designing this course. This is the need. This is the audience, and here's the broad framework of how we're going to do it. So it's kind of like that pitch. And then the assignment 3 is more around a rapid prototype of how you would implement that.
Because I'm imagining that you'd want to see sort of multimedia content there in terms of the things we've been talking about and discussing in class, like especially for something that's a design history subject. The value of an online course is being able to present those resources for students. So you would want to see some kind of examples of how those would be used in a teaching context, wouldn't you? Or not so much? It's more about theory.
Yeah, it's more about the design.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you came across an example and said, hey, here's an example from, you know, the course at MIT or whatever, this is kind of what I'm thinking and what it might look like, type of thing.
Okay.
You know?
Because a lot of the challenges we have in terms of online learning are, you know, what we're discussing at the moment are things like, how do we do online site tours, you know?
Yeah.
Or you want to actually discuss the building, the context, the urban design, the detail, the interior space, and that's where things like, you know.
Yeah, and that's really interesting.
Photography, all this sort of stuff is actually very relevant. Yeah, so it's very kind of interesting and fun, and it's also, very pertinent. So those are the kind of major challenges. Yeah.
But I think something like, you know, particularly architecture, it's geographically defined. So things like virtual reality, augmented reality, you know, geo-positioning, all relevant to bring into that design. You know, most buildings don't move, I suppose, unless you're designing a super yacht or something.
Yeah, it's kind of, how to explore interior space with students in a two-dimensional world. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool.
Who else can I pick on? Rebecca, are you there, or have you disappeared?
I'm here.
So where are you at, Rebecca?
I'm probably in the same situation. Well, I'm actually in the middle of a curriculum revamp now. And so I'm going to do that module.
Yeah, great idea.
It's a second year ecology one that's going to start second semester next year. So I guess we've already done a lot of the thinking for what the issues are and why it needs changing. And then there's kind of some loose structure that I have to work with, but then I would like to try and integrate some more of these kind of learning theories and kind of make better use of them, because we've got money to develop online lectures.
You've got money.
Yeah. At the minute, it's being proposed that the online lectures will just be supplementary material and we'll continue lecturing as normal. But I mean, I'd like to think through how we might better be able to use those online lectures and within this assessment task.
Yep.
And
I
then
know,
present it to the other coordinators as well.
And you've been having some discussions with Eliza Pone?
Yes, yeah, that's about something different. But yeah, that's another thing that we are keen to integrate into some of the marine teaching.
Just kind of wondering if that might be a useful thing to focus one of your assignments on, that sort of context. And certainly the idea of educational design research is that it is a collaboration between researchers and practitioners and a team-based approach.
Yeah. So yeah, that's something that Eliza and I would like to develop further. I don't know if it's at the stage where
yeah,
I can think it through for this assessment, but
yep, sure. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
But yes, definitely. Yeah, she emailed me again this morning and said that she'd had a conversation with you about it as well. But yeah, the app needs to be developed for Melbourne, because at the minute it's only for Sydney and Hong Kong. So we'd have to, we need to do a bit of thinking about what it would look like for Melbourne.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what about Jing He? How's the washing going?
Grey.
Yeah. Okay, Patrick, where are you at?
I am somewhere around what has already been discussed, but I intend to use a prototype subject and looking to develop a subject that is based on urban planning discipline. So I have given that subject name Global Cities, and it is because being here in Melbourne, I've realized that almost all our students, urban planning students, are global in nature from almost every part of the world. So I felt that it would be good for them to understand urban planning issues across the globe. So it would be good for us to have a subject that focuses on how global cities behave and the differences between the global north and the global south. So in the context of the framework, I emphasize on the constructivist, what am I saying? Yeah, I emphasize on constructivism, and I also use the problem-based learning as an approach because my intent is that this subject should be based on student experiences in terms of where they come from. So whichever part of the world that you come from, you should be able to relate or talk about your city and relate it to another city in a different context in terms of management approaches in dealing with urban issues. So those are my two critical frameworks or the theoretical basis. Then in terms of the learning outcomes, I'm looking at a combination of in terms of the activities, I'm looking at a combination of lectures and the lectures will involve a class presentation, as Tom, you have introduced us to. So some of the students will present certain topics during the course of the subject delivery or the course of the semester. Then, importantly, they will work in group to develop a plan or proposal for the future of the various cities that they will select to work with. So, given the time differences as highlighted by Andrea, I stated that the lecture will be recorded. So those students who wouldn't be able to join the live streaming will have the chance to have a look at that. But the tutorials will be determined such a way that students from different geographical locations within a particular time frame will have the chance to have similar meetings. So they will have live meetings based on your time locations or the time zones that you find yourself. So that will give them the chance to interact with different tutors and also interact with other students. Then, of course, we are going to use, and the tutorials is going to be, we are going to base it on Zoom to allow for face-to-face interactions and also to have some level of contact with the tutors, or if it's the subject coordinator, then that is also allowed. So that is so far what I have been able to do, but my concern now is learning how to translate this onto the Spark. I'm still learning how to use it, so I will spend the rest of the week to really organize it well. And the question I wanted to ask you, Tom, is you indicated on the requirement that the presentation should be equivalent to about 1,500 words. So if we decide, because it's a presentation, if one decides to use more of images and pictures, does that count into the 1,500 words, or you are looking at words as in what we use in terms of submitting a full assignment?
No, I think the idea is more that it's a equivalent workload. So, you know, how long it would take you to write 1,500 words in comparison to develop a presentation, rather than your presentation must have 1,500 words in it.
Okay. And the submission should be done before next week's presentation, or it can be done after the presentation?
Either. Yeah, you know, it would be nice if people, you know, I'll put a spreadsheet up probably by early tomorrow. If you have done your presentation before you've got the link ready before you actually present live, then it would be useful for people to be able to have a look. But if you haven't, then just post it there afterwards.
Okay.
So just while you're talking, I was thinking also you're probably looking at elements of flipped classroom. Would be useful to you know, look at that too.
Okay.
There's a bit of design framework, particularly if you're pre-recording videos, and how does the flipped classroom model perhaps inform some of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Jing.
Yes, sorry, Thomas. And you know, for the past 6 months, I'm the central work. Even I work at home, I have 2 children to look after, you know. Say it's hard for me, but it's very exciting since last night. You know, for the past 6 months, I didn't go to sleep before midnight because I'm working very hard for the theoretical biology to fight the coronavirus. You know, we just figure out biomedical genomical sequencing for vaccination of the COVID-19. And we are working very hard to work with University of Queensland, and it finally succeed. I'm thinking about maybe the new COVID, the new vaccination, the improved one actually, could be further goes to the more people within the 3 months. You know, that's what our team is hoping. And sorry, Thomas, can I ask if I can catch up the assignment, because I missed most of the assignment for the past weeks because it's too busy. You know, I can't quite focus on the, you know, the course. But, you know, from last night, I'm quite relieved because all of the algorithms of the DNA sequences have been successfully done. And we already figure out what the 30,000 sequences meaning and what the structure. And the good discovery is the current, you know, the evolving virus is going to the wrong way. Basically, the 382 sequences is missing in the new virus. Means it won't be much fatal anymore, and it might be curable somehow from the vaccination. Thank you, Thomas.
Well, that's exciting. That's exciting. news, Jing, and you know, thank you for your hard work on that. So that's really, really important. So yeah, certainly, you know, although I've put dates and time frames around the assessments, I haven't been hard and strict on those and pretty flexible around them. So, you know, as long as you can get those in before the close date for the course, which is, I think, the 31st of August now. I don't know if you'll be able to achieve that or not, but you know, give it the best shot that you can.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, who's next on my screen? I think I've got Daniel. Are you there, Daniel? I can see your smiling face.
No, I think he's gone.
He's probably making his coffee. Okay. Patanon. Patanon. Sorry.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So for my subject, I'm just start to teach this semester, and I think one of the interesting thing is that this subject we have a tutoring budget cut off. So we usually have like 2 tutors to help students for about 30 students. And now everything changed due to the COVID and online learning. So I have to think something new for my subject. And my idea is that, so actually I learned from this course that team-based approaches helps a lot. When I work with Pauline to develop the presentations, and I feel like, oh, I learn a lot from her, and it helps me a lot from learning the learning theories. So I plan to do the same thing for my students. So in the workshop, instead of depending on the tutor, I plan to ask them to work as a team throughout the semester, and hoping that the team will help each other to do the exercise. And I plan to, for the assessment, I plan to give them a mark for the active participation to encourage them to help the teammates. And I'm hoping that that's gonna increase more interaction with the student, increase more engagement, and in the same time, it's reduce the workload of the tutors. And so since it's more like a flipped classroom, like where we focus on the exercise with the students, so I also plan to put more materials, and so then they can prepare themselves before the workshops. Yeah, that's my plan.
Great.
Yeah.
It's great to see some of your experiences filtering through into you know, how you're going to go about designing, which is great. Leah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. So I teach a first semester master's course called Introduction to Machine Learning, and my plan is to develop a module for that course focusing on ethical impacts of the technologies that my students are probably going to develop once they leave university. So my cohort is pretty big. It's 300 to 500 students and fairly diverse. They come from different computer science courses, some more technical, some less technical, also some from a more mathematics-based background, some PhD students who just take this course on top of other things they're doing. So I'd like to build up on this diversity, and there's also a lot of diversity in terms of demographics. Obviously, they come from all over the world. I'd like to leverage that and assign students to as diverse groups as possible, building on the social constructivism idea of having them discuss and leverage their different standpoints to discuss ethical issues. I'll also, because I'm practically forced to do this, adapt the flipped learning framework, where I want students to go off, discuss in groups, and learn about the background offline, and then convene with them in a kind of online Zoom setting to discuss. And in terms of the content of this module, I want to give them case studies of certain technologies that have been developed and have been used in practice. One example would be the automatic CV or applicant screening technology, which has been adopted by Amazon recently and hasn't gone as well as they had hoped. So there were obvious biases in these algorithms, and these are the kinds of things I want them to discuss and analyze, both from a technical perspective, what are the underlying machine learning algorithms, but also what are the practical things to consider once they are used in the real world. So if that makes sense.
That sounds exciting, and probably quite a different learning experience for your student cohort.
Exactly. So the course is extremely technical so far, and it will be a completely different way to think.
Yeah. So, hopefully it would end up in a really exciting learning experience for your students. I guess the key with it's going to be significantly different to everything else they've done in their learning is trying to scaffold them into that and really make why you're taking a different approach to this really explicit. And obviously it's quite a different subject. It's around ethics rather than just formulas, etc. But I think that could be really exciting for you to work on.
Cool. I also have a very mundane question. I'm a Linux person. I use a Linux computer, and Adobe Spark is not very well adapted to non-Windows people. So what happens if I refuse to use Adobe Spark?
What would you suggest as an alternative?
Google Slides, whatever you're happy with.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy with Google Slides. I guess it's just I want people to go beyond PowerPoint. And
PowerPoint is very Windows-centric too, so I guarantee you that I'm not going to use PowerPoint.
Yeah. So I'm a Mac user, been a Mac user for years, and I have kind of dabbled with Linux, but it's just like, at the end of the day, I'm just not enough of a geek to bother. But sure. I think it's what's appropriate for your context, and certainly, that sounds like a good idea.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I see Lyle's now at the beach. Have I missed anyone out? Pauline, have you given us a bit of a talk through of where you're at?
Okay, can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so I have been, so it is I find this learning quite challenging because I'm really inexperienced in this teaching, but I have been getting, so the sort of questions I keep asking myself is, what can I do so I teach a second year introduction to data science subject, and my course content, my subject content is very, very similar to Leah's. So the introduction to machine learning. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to hear what she's saying about introducing the ethics lectures, because we, in the final weeks of our subject, it is always a module on ethics. So we've been teaching ethics to students. The thing is, what I've learned in this subject, all the learning theories, I'm actually quite fascinated with the constructionism, and so I guess that terminology doesn't matter. I used to just get very focused on what's the difference between constructionism and social constructionism, but I think that they are quite similar in terms of putting into practice. So combining all that, I think the issue I have been is I try quite hard to get something right, but it actually takes experience to get a balance right. So how I think my blog post and things I learned from other people is how do I then borrow bits and pieces and then put into a practice that works. So I think it's a very complex optimization problem that I try to solve. But so I think what I'm going to look at is just incorporating students' feedback from my past and what the different colleagues in this subject is presenting, looking at how I can recognize students' weakness and their knowledge gap, and how to stage them, because they are the second year students, and I realized my practice had been sometimes going too extreme and ask them to find out answers themselves, but actually they need preparation for that. So that's the sort of thing I'm looking at, and the cognitive overload. So I need to be very careful in designing what I give them and what I leave them to explore for themselves, especially online. So the way to collect the feedback is actually, to me, so what I'm trying to say is that I get quite so the ingredients are all there. I just need to make it into a recipe. The only thing that I don't quite get is how I can accurately actually receive the feedback to actually measure that the final design putting in is going to be effective.
Yeah, well, I guess that's evaluating it after you've actually implemented and sort of building into the process, obviously some form of data gathering. So whether that be surveys of students, maybe focus groups, interviews, some way of getting, quantitative and qualitative feedback on what you've done. And obviously ethics comes into that, and particularly ethics around power relationships, and will this feedback influence student grades, etc., etc. So you just need to build into that things like, well, the evaluation or the feedback from the students will be after their assignments are finally graded, and perhaps a third party will be the one who hands out the surveys, etc. So just to meet ethics consent type of processes, and make sure there's no power relationship going on there that would affect student responses.
Yeah. And talking about ethics, I just want to share my experience. I think when we try to design ethics content, it is actually quite interesting. You need to really consider the cultural difference, because different cultures think ethics, privacy, what's fair, what's important for individuals are very different.
Yeah, definitely. And that filters through every aspect of academia, right through into, publishing and what different cultures publish and how they go about that publication process, and whether they even get students consent for, data they're reporting on or not. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's me.
Well, thank you, everyone. It sounds like everyone's pretty much on track, which is great. And really looking forward to seeing your presentations next week. So don't forget to, post, I think next week is also your post 4, and post comment 4 is also due. Perhaps that's based on the design of assignment 2, but it's open to whatever you want to submit. So there are 1 or 2 people who haven't submitted any yet, so just encourage you to submit those. If it's an issue of how to do that, then get in contact with me. If it's an issue you're not sure how to go about doing that, if it's more of just a time issue, well, I'm flexible around dates. Okay, thank you, everyone. It's been great to catch up. We'll see you all next week.
See you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.